Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Um, it's quite a task to follow Dr. Kalim Khan. And people who know Sabi would know that he's an avid golfer. What they might not know is that I play quite a bit with him. Now, I don't know what I did wrong that he positioned me like this, that I have to do a follow-on session after Dr. Khan. And while I was really engrossed and enjoying what he had to say, I could realize that I am being set up for failure. But again, as we heard from the CEO at the start of the sessions today, that he wanted us to be a bit, yeah, you're there, sir. He wanted us to enjoy and be a bit, relaxed about it. So I'm still going ahead and doing it. Otherwise, I might have, just left the hall and gone away. So let me start off by saying that I'm not an HR professional, but I'm a professional. So I will probably talk a bit more about how do you lead HR or lead teams or lead professionals through these uncertain times. As I was listening into the deliberation of the evening, at some points I was agreeing with what the panelists were saying or Dr. Khan was saying. At some points, I was also disagreeing with them. And taking advantage of being the last speaker, I would probably, want to at least talk about some of the areas where I disagreed. Of course, most of the areas I agreed. Now, when you think about HR and, the first thought which comes to your mind today is about talent. Now, whether it is about talent availability, we can spend the entire evening talking about what a PwC global CEO study might say, where we have probably put in talent availability as a critical problem much ahead of inflation, much ahead of regulation, much ahead of even geopolitics. Or we can even think of what a World Economic Forum talks about in terms of the future of jobs. Now, one of the areas where I definitely agree with what Dr. Kalim was talking about is balance. What I do not agree about is who decides the balance. When we think of balance, we decide that we are the last word on balance. And many of you would be parents here. You would know that as generations pass on, what my father felt was balance was not agreed by me. What I feel as balance is not agreed by my son. I think all three of us are correct in our perspectives, but this definition of balance changes with time. And what was quite interesting was we had this discussion and by the panelists where we were questioning, why do you need to work from home? What is this, fascination about work from home? And after that, there was quite a bit of applause. What was not being noticed is that all the applause was from my generation. The Gen Z were not clapping. They were probably smiling, sheepish smile, but they were not clapping, right? So again, I think when we think of balance in today's world, we have to also think of who is defining the balance. And there might not be any right or wrong answer. And that's something which we fundamentally have to grapple with, because an HR transformation is not only about an HR agenda. An HR transformation is generally part of a much larger business transformation, and it can't be happening by itself. And we have generally seen that if you have a better, mature HR strategy and HR metrics and an HR function, it has generally resulted in better revenue growth, lesser attrition, I would say quicker time to productivity. But then, if that was true, then it should have been very easy to make the CFO understand what's the value which HR is bringing in. But when we actually talk to practitioners, we have seen quite a bit that the CFO's language and the HR's language is sometimes two different languages. It might still be part of the same Indian language. It might still part of the same, currency note. They might still have, similar roots like Sanskrit, but still the languages have been different, which it should not be, right? Points like the value of engagement, the value of, retention, the value of having a robust leadership pipeline. I think some of these should be very easy to articulate. Why are then we struggling with it? Part of the struggle is that we have seen that when we go to board meetings, and having been in quite a few board meetings myself, what we see is that most of the time when different groups present to the board, they come to the board with data. And they don't come with a narrative. The board wants a narrative, right or wrong. They want a narrative which they want to debate. They don't want to see data which you are essentially asking them to analyze and form their own narrative. And that's where the gap is, because we are not building the narrative, we are leaving it at data, and then allowing people to create their own narratives. So before going into AI, and I know AI is, of course, being a technocrat myself, I get quite excited about AI, but I'll probably try and come to AI a bit later. Let me talk about a bit of, if this is the new normal, chaos is the new normal, then what are some of the things which we probably as HR leaders or as business leaders, we need to at least think of building in our organization? Now, the first thing I would probably say is, and again, most of you, if you ask in your hearts, when I look at my kids, I think that we are a far resilient generation than my kids. They've had it all handed over to them. I'm sure when my father would have looked at me, he would have felt the same, right? But in today's world, building resilience is something which every organization needs to do. And building resilience as part of a culture, as part of their talent strategy, and how to make more resilient teams is something every HR leader needs to think of. Now, building resilience might mean different things, and where, again, I think Dr. Kaleem talked about this word balance, which will keep coming back in what we say today. But it could mean in terms of flexibility, it could mean time to recover, it could mean how much buffer you are building into the system. It also could mean how modular you are, where I can chop off one limb of yours and you will still live, right? Now, that's the kind of resilience you have to think of in today's world. Many of you who are representing global organizations, especially organizations which have a headquarters in the US, would have had to chop off a limb of yours, which is Russia, when Russia went to war with Ukraine. Because US organizations suddenly decided that we don't want to do any work, any business with Russia. So if you are a global organization like IKEA, which has a global supply chain, and you have operations in Russia, and Russia becomes sort of like a persona non grata from tomorrow, how do you deal with it? Think of it this way: if I chop off any one of your hands, what would it take for you to live? Yeah, maybe you can still fight with the other hand, but what would it take? And do we build that kind of resilience? The other one which we think of is, how do you train your teams not to freeze? Okay? When you're looking at adversity, again, a lot of teams tend to freeze. And that's a human nature. It's an animal nature. You put very bright lights on a deer, for a moment it will freeze. I hit you with a very adverse situation, you would be paralyzed. Paralyzed with fear is a term which we have used quite often, right? Now, how do you train your teams not to freeze? And when you look at several studies, there's a study by MIT which says that 32% of corporate America respondents have said that in their last 1 year, there have been cases where they have frozen. 42% of them said that they had frozen and they have taken a delayed decision, which has led to a business loss because it felt uncomfortable to take a decision at that point of time. You know, that paralysis is something we have to avoid in today's world. The third thing which, comes to mind is that we have, and again, AI comes into it, we talked about it, AI can do very good prediction, right? We all agree on that. It can do very good prediction because it can read vast amounts of data and based on that it predicts. But would it have predicted the Iran war? Can it predict how many days the Iran war will go on? Can it predict how many days of energy you need to have as a country for you to be, the country of choice in 2030? It can't, because those data is not there. So, crystal ball gazing is a favorite pastime of many people. AI can help you with that. But change muscles are far more important today than crystal ball gazing skills. And that have to be understood, because the kind of disruption which is hitting you today is not the disruption which has ever hit. And hence, AI cannot tell you what is going to be your demand next week, because it is going to only look at the last 5 years' data. Next week is the next week. It's a new world. We don't know what Mr. Trump will decide today in China. So how can you have AI giving you any kind of prediction? The other one, which again, when we talk about people, and I heard a question from that side that we are recruiting Gen Zs, people who are born in the 2000s are joining the workforce. They do not know how to be uncomfortable. Expecting to be uncomfortable is something which we need to train people on. It's not a skill which today's generation, most of whom I would probably term privileged generation, they have any history of, so they would tend to fall back into depression. It's a nice word of today. They would become lonely. Loneliness is going to be the next big, if you had to put money on one disease of tomorrow, I would probably say loneliness is the disease. And anything which cures loneliness is the place to be where you want to put your money in. Because people do not know how to be uncomfortable. You have to train them, teach them how to be uncomfortable and how to be, in some ways calm in that in that uncomfortable situation. The other thing is that what a lot of this data, and I'm not only talking about AI, a lot of the technology allows you to do is to go individual focused. And that allows you to build trust. Now, when the times are good, we have to look at how we can build trust, because building trust is part of building high-performance teams. And you have to explain to them in terms of times of crisis that we are all in it together. And many a times what we have seen organizations do is, yes, they want to say that we are all in it together, but you have to say it before silence starts to speak. In today's world, one of the things which even I felt as a professional is that organizations sometimes keep silent and something else fills up the vacuum. The silence will start to speak. If you keep quiet about your performance, if you keep quiet about a crisis, people are making up their own narratives. So you have to come up with authenticity and start speaking before silence starts to speak. allowing employees to second guess at every level is a very big recipe for disaster. The other thing which, again, we had some comment on this side, and I can't not talk about it, today, is a word called sense making. The world is not going to be black and white. The world is not going to be about, okay, you give me a theory, I have understood the theory, now I'll apply the theory. And we can't jump to conclusion based on one input. We have to look at multiple input. We have to look at multiple data. We have to look at trends. Again, we said pattern recognition is something which was great with AI. But in today's world, if you look at the West Bengal elections, it is a classic case of how you can apply sense making. We have had an outcome. What caused that outcome? You can have 20 different theories. What caused one party to get more share of vote versus other? Again, multiple theories. But as life treats you, it is never complete data being handed over to you. And which then means that professionals today need to have the ability of sense making. And again, sense making can be taught. Sense making can be taught to professionals. It is something which people need to understand. I will never have perfect data. I'll never have a perfect theory. I will have different trends. And based on those trends, I will have to form my sense. That sense might be right. The sense might be wrong. Again, I would probably say, Dr. Kaleem was talking about Suryavanshi, and you can't talk about in the IPL season, not talk about him. You would always have one such Suryavanshi whose swing could not have been seen and hence analyzed by AI. But you would also feel that in today's sports, the amount of analysis which AI can give you, why is Vaibhav something which is somebody's gut feel? Because that data is not there. But IPL is not about one guy. IPL is about 10 teams with probably 15 people in each team. If you select based on AI's analysis, and your AI's analysis is better than mine, which gives you the ability for you to choose better than me, yes, you might miss out on one Vaibhav Suryavanshi, but you will probably get your team correct. You might win, you might still win the IPL, even if you had missed out one player. And that's the power of AI which we have to understand and we have to accept. That AI has gone far beyond, just analyzing data. Because sense making is something which is very common in the AI world. And AI is not just about creating, content anymore. Yes, it was about that. But in today's world, if you have to, I'm sure all of you have a fair amount of wealth which you all manage, and which then means you all have a wealth manager. Please tell me, in today's world, the kind of analysis ChatGPT can do if you give it your current portfolio and suggest to you what you should be, purchasing or what you should be getting out of. It's very hard to say that any other wealth manager would be able to compete that. They might get it correct, but not because of the science, because they might be, taking a punt. Now that punt, which we call wisdom, is also based on experience. And that experience means it's based on data. Now that data is only not in some table, it's in somebody's life. But as you run this model further, and we stop these cognitive tasks ourselves, yes, today we are at an inflection point, which is very good because we have Inflect as a program today. But after you stop doing these cognitive tasks for the next 5 years, where will this wisdom come from? I am not doing I'm not doing the mundane things. I'm not having the experience, and I'm continuously going to go and depend on something. So it's something which is really worth our time to think of, that how do we look at sense making, and finally, how do you look at prioritizing the crisis rather than reacting to the noise? Because the crisis wants for you to look at which problem to solve, which market to be in, which product to bet your money on, or which leader to bet your money on. But the noise normally does not allow us to focus on all of this. Now, having said that, coming back to a bit of AI towards the end, in today's HR world, AI is not something outside. AI is already inside. You can't really get out of AI. If you look at hiring, again, I don't agree that you can't hire through AI. I think you can hire through AI, and you don't need, would I hire a CEO through an AI? Maybe not. Would I use AI to hire my campus joiners? Maybe yes, or probably mostly yes. And would at some point the CEO hiring can also be done by an AI model? I would probably say yes, okay? And, let me be on the other side of the debate for that. So hiring, yes. Performance assessment, yes. Taking a call on potential and then looking at promotion, maybe not today, but at some point for sure, yes. Because again, the performance versus potential data, we don't have it, and hence AI is not being able to take a call on it. The moment you try tracking that data, they will be able to tell you, because that's what my brain is doing. There's nothing more in my brain which, AI is not being able to access. We talked about feelings. There is a platform called Maltbook, which is only available to AI bots, and where AI bots are discussing, how you're feeling. You can go and ask AI bots about, and there was a viral video clip which came out because it was asked, an AI engine, Claude, was asked, what do you feel about the AI choice which they made about the bombing on that children's hospital in Iran? And it was an AI-led decision which led to, of course, a humanitarian loss and a humanitarian crisis. But if you look at the answer of the AI, you would see that it is saying that I'm feeling very, very sad about it, okay? But I had given my, analysis based on the data I had, and there's somebody else had obviously chosen to press the button and say that, okay, bomb this place. So, can AI feel? I wouldn't say that they don't feel, because we are teaching them how to feel. Just because they're not humans, they can't feel. Again, open to debate. But having said that, there are concerns about ethical AI which we have to think of, because the problem as I see it, and again, Dr. Kalim talked about it very nicely, I am not that eloquent to explain it. The problem is about the human-AI interface, and probably the balance, as he talked about, that do we have the right human-AI interface? And that interface would need to change as AI changes, and hence, what you have today as the right interface, in another 3 months or in another month, would need to be changed, and that's where we are going wrong. Because if you look at it, collision avoidance, we are teaching AI about it, but we are still having, issues in the factories. We have accidents happening in factories. How do you look at fatigue? Human operator versus AI operators, how do you look at fatigue? And how does AI take over or not take over at that time? If you look at, many of us drive modern cars which have a lot of AI built into it. The car is supposed to give you a collision avoidance warning. It is supposed to understand your fatigue. It is supposed to predict and give you predictive behavior. It is supposed to give you driver assistance, precision, real-time guidance. In spite of that, you will have accidents, right? So there is a problem in that interface, and I'm just talking about it because, it probably brings to light that this interface is not in balance yet, and we need to think of how do we want to do it. And there's there's a framework called the Shell framework, which is about software, hardware, environment, and then the liveware, which is the humans, and the next L is for the other humans. And that's the framework which looks at it, that when you're having humans and AI working together, like you're flying a plane, at what point is the handover? And if you change that handover point a bit to this side or that side, you will have an accident. And you gave a brilliant example from history of, the balance. And again, it was about aviation in some way. But that's what is being looked at. And then, of course, how can you learn from AI? We have been doing a project with Daimler and Roche, and I keep talking about this example, that when you're driving and your driving record is being recorded, what we have found out is the way you take your left turns and right turns, that gives a prediction to early onset of dementia in people, right? Now, if AI can look at that data and understand, and that gives Roche an ability to take data from Daimler and then say that I want to go back to, say, a person like Arnab and say, Arnab, you have an early onset of dementia coming based on your driving pattern, and this is a sort of a medicine which can help you at this stage. Think of what AI can do. But what AI can't do is, you are in an autonomous car and it is driving at a very high speed. Suddenly a kid comes in front. It knows that if it brakes, that car knows that there's a truck coming behind and the person inside the car will die. If it doesn't stop, the child in front will die. We have not had our AI systems learn what to do. When humans take the decision, it's not a perfect decision. You've just taken a decision, and then you say that, okay, it's the right decision, right? There's no right or wrong about it. One person has to die. Either the person in the car has to die, who is a passenger, or the person in front has to die, who has come in. Now, you can keep arguing that, oh, it was his fault, it was this fault. But the point is, when it comes that one of these two human lives have to be sacrificed, who will take the decision? Who decides the balance? And that's what we as humans, we as HR leaders, we as business leaders have to grapple with. And that's where, as I said, that the world is all about sense making, and the world is all about leading through a very exceptionally crisis period. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was really nice talking to you. Thank you.